Have you ever noticed how some relationships don't break you suddenly? They drain you slowly? You feel tired after talking to them. Your peace disappears. You start doubting yourself. They cross your boundaries, dismiss your feelings, and somehow you always end up apologizing. They don't support your growth. They resist your change. Your body feels tense before meeting them, and relief comes when they're gone. You stay because they are family, or because you've known them for years. But deep inside, something keeps asking you one quiet question. Why does this relationship cost me my peace? These are not accidents. These are warning signs. And today we are going to clearly explain these 8 signs. Signs that tell you when it's time to step back, even from family or close friends, through calm reasoning, clarity, and Stoic wisdom. Before we talk about cutting ties, we must talk about something more difficult. How to stay calm when emotions are loud. Because whenever the subject is family or close friends, logic becomes quiet and guilt starts speaking instead. Stoicism teaches us that we do not react first. We observe first. We pause, we breathe. We ask ourselves one honest question. Is this relationship helping me become a better human? Or is it slowly destroying my peace? Imagine sitting alone at night, replaying conversations in your head. Not arguments, just moments, small comments, jokes that didn't feel like jokes, silences that felt heavier than words, and you tell yourself, maybe I'm overthinking. A Stoic would say, no, you are finally thinking clearly. Pain doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from people who sit at your table. Someone once asked, how can I even think about cutting off family? The answer was calm, not cruel. You don't cut them off emotionally first. You cut off the illusion that blood guarantees respect. This is not about hatred. This is about clarity. A Stoic understands that we are responsible for our inner world. We cannot control others, but we can control how much access they have to our peace. If someone constantly disturbs that peace, the question is no longer about loyalty. It becomes a question of self-respect. Now listen carefully. The first sign appears quietly. You don't notice it immediately. You feel drained after interacting with them, not physically but mentally. After every meeting, every call, every message, you feel smaller. Your energy drops, your motivation fades. You replay their words again and again, wondering why you feel guilty for simply being yourself. You might hear a voice inside saying, they didn't mean it like that. And another voice replies, then why do I feel like this every time? A Stoic would not ignore that pattern. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. If every interaction leaves your thoughts darker, something is wrong. Picture a dialogue. You say, I'm trying my best. They reply, that's what you always say. They laugh. You smile, but inside something breaks. This is not motivation. This is erosion. People who constantly drain your energy without offering understanding are not misunderstood souls. They are unregulated ones. And Stoicism reminds us that it is not our duty to sacrifice our mental stability to regulate someone else's chaos. The second sign feels more painful because it involves respect, or rather the lack of it. They dismiss your boundaries, not aggressively, casually, as if your limits are optional suggestions, not firm lines. You say no and they hear maybe. You say stop and they say relax. You explain calmly, this makes me uncomfortable. They respond, you're too sensitive. A Stoic would recognize this instantly. Epictetus taught that anyone who insults you only has power if you accept the insult as truth. But what if it's not an insult? What if it's repeated disregard? Disrespect doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through sarcasm, jokes, and constant minimization of your feelings. You begin questioning yourself. Am I too sensitive? Am I the problem? That self-doubt is not accidental. It grows in environments where your emotions are treated as inconveniences. A healthy relationship may disagree with your boundaries, but it will never mock them. The third sign is subtle but dangerous. They only support you when it benefits them. When you succeed quietly, they are silent. When you struggle, they are critical. But when your success can be attached to their identity, suddenly they are proud. You tell them about a goal. They say, be realistic. Months later, you achieve it. They say, I always knew you could. A Stoic would see through this instantly. This is not support. This is ownership without contribution. True allies want you to win even when they gain nothing. Anyone who only celebrates you when it serves their ego is not walking beside you. They are standing on your shadow. You feel confused because they are not entirely bad. And that's what makes it hard. Stoicism does not teach us to label people as villains. It teaches us to see people as they are, not as we wish them to be. The fourth sign is when communication becomes manipulation. Every disagreement somehow ends with you apologizing. Not because you were wrong, but because you were tired. Tired of explaining, tired of defending, tired of being misunderstood on purpose. You say, "That hurt me." They reply, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you talk to me." Now the conversation is no longer about your pain. It's about their sacrifice. Stoics call this emotional control disguised as moral superiority. When someone constantly reminds you of what they've done for you, they are not giving. You are paying with your silence. Seneca warned that no one is more dangerous than the one who believes they are always right, especially when they use kindness as a weapon. The fifth sign is perhaps the most revealing. You start hiding parts of yourself, not because you're ashamed, but because it's safer. You stop sharing your dreams. You avoid certain topics. You edit your personality. Around them, you are not fully you. Ask yourself honestly, why? A Stoic believes that character is shaped by environment. If you must shrink to be accepted, the environment is hostile to your growth. You might say, but they're family. And Stoicism answers, and you are still a human being. Family should be the place where truth can breathe, not suffocate. The sixth sign feels like walking on unstable ground. Their behavior is unpredictable. One day they are kind, the next day cold. Their approval feels like a reward you must earn. You find yourself overthinking messages, analyzing tone, preparing for emotional shifts. This is not connection. This is conditioning. A Stoic mind seeks stability, not emotional gambling. When peace depends on someone else's mood, you are not in a relationship. You are in survival mode. The seventh sign cuts deep because it attacks your growth. They resist your change. When you start setting boundaries, they say you've changed. When you become calmer, they say you've become distant. When you grow stronger, they say you've become arrogant. But listen carefully. People who benefited from your weakness will always feel threatened by your strength. Stoicism teaches us that growth is not betrayal. Self-improvement does not require permission. You're allowed to evolve, even if it makes others uncomfortable. The eighth sign is the quietest but the most honest. Your body knows before your mind accepts it. Your chest tightens before seeing their name on your phone. Your stomach sinks before visiting them. You feel relief when they are not around. The body does not lie. A Stoic listens to reason, but also respects nature. And your nervous system is part of nature. When your entire being signals danger, exhaustion, or stress, pay attention. This does not mean you must cut ties immediately. Stoicism does not rush. It observes. It creates distance internally before creating distance externally. In the next part, we will talk about how to walk away without hatred, how to create distance without drama, and how to protect your peace without becoming cold. Because the goal is not isolation, the goal is inner freedom. And that requires courage. At some point, clarity arrives quietly, not as anger, not as rebellion, but as acceptance. You realize that staying connected to someone who consistently harms your peace is not patience, it is self-abandonment. Stoicism never teaches us to endure unnecessary suffering. It teaches us to endure what is unavoidable and to release what is optional. And many relationships, even family ones, are optional in the way they affect your inner world. The hardest moment comes when you stop waiting for them to change, because hope can be a beautiful thing, but misplaced hope becomes a prison. You replay memories and say to yourself, they weren't always like this, and that may be true, but Stoicism reminds us to deal with people as they are now, not as they once were and not as we imagine they could be. There is a quiet dialogue that happens inside you. I should be more understanding. I have been understanding. I should explain myself better. I have explained myself 100 times. I should try one more time. How many times is one more time? When that inner conversation becomes honest, the answer becomes unavoidable. Another painful realization appears when you understand that some people do not want resolution. They want control. They want familiarity. They want you in the role they assigned to you long ago. And when you refuse to play that role, conflict begins. You speak calmly. They accuse you of disrespect. You explain your boundary. They call it distance. You protect your peace. They call it selfishness. A Stoic would not argue with labels. Labels are tools of manipulation. Instead, a Stoic asks one question: is my character intact? If your integrity remains, their misunderstanding is not your burden. There is a myth that cutting ties means anger, confrontation, or dramatic endings. In reality, the most powerful separation happens without noise. You do not need to announce your departure. You simply stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Distance does not require cruelty. It requires consistency. You answer less. You share less. You engage less emotionally. And something interesting happens. They notice the change before you mention it. Why are you acting different? Why are you so quiet? Why are you distant? A Stoic response is not defensive. It is neutral. I'm just focusing on my life. But what they really mean is that they can no longer reach the version of you they could influence. Guilt will visit you. Expect it, especially when family is involved. Society teaches us that family must be endured at all costs. Stoicism disagrees. It teaches that virtue is the measure of closeness, not blood. You are not required to keep drinking poison just because it was served by someone related to you. There will be moments when you remember their kindness. Stoicism does not erase gratitude. You can appreciate what someone once gave you without allowing them to keep taking from you. Gratitude and distance can coexist. You can say internally, "Thank you for what you taught me," and still walk away from what they continue to damage. Another dialogue appears, but what if they need me? And what if I am the one who needs me now? Stoicism teaches responsibility to the self first, not in a selfish way, but in a sustainable way. A broken person cannot be a pillar for others. You might fear loneliness. That fear is understandable. But there is a difference between being alone and being at peace. Many people are surrounded by others and still feel deeply lonely. And some feel deeply at home within themselves when they finally step away. Silence can be healing. Distance can bring clarity. In the quiet, you start to hear your own thoughts again. Your values sharpen. Your nervous system relaxes. You realize how much emotional weight you were carrying. That was never yours to hold. And here is the part few people talk about. When you walk away from unhealthy relationships, you do not become heartless. You become selective. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing validation. You stop negotiating your worth. A Stoic does not beg for understanding. A Stoic acts in alignment with reason and lets the rest fall away. Some people will speak badly about you after you step back. That is almost guaranteed. Stoicism prepares you for this. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should not waste time worrying about what others say when you know your actions are just their story about you is none of your business. Your peace is. There may come a moment when they attempt to pull you back, not with accountability, but with nostalgia. They remind you of old times, shared struggles, sacrifices, and you feel that familiar pull. Pause. Ask yourself, has anything actually changed? If not, remember, missing someone does not mean they deserve access to you again. Sometimes the bravest act is loving someone from afar. You will also notice something unexpected. As you detach from draining connections, you create space. And into that space, healthier relationships begin to enter. People who listen, people who respect silence, people who do not punish you for honesty.